Could you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
My name is Asamat. I'm a guitarist, composer, educator. I've been playing guitar for the past 24 years. I'm a full time musician. I have 4 degrees in music, perform all over the world. I've written music for short films. I recently wrote some music for the video game No Straight Roads that recently came out. And I perform with the Malaysian Philharmonic Orchestra, perform video game music, perform jazz music, perform Malay jazz, and I've given 3 TEDx talks. And currently, I'm most focused right now in developing online courses, focusing on guitar and also on music education and music business and marketing. A subscription service where guitarists get a new 2 hour guitar course from me every month, and I'm on the third month right now. And my vision for that is basically uh, to eventually document as much of whatever I've learned the past 24 years via these courses. And my hope is that it will reach out to more people. Story is this: the honest story is this. A really cool guitarist. His name is Sham Kamikaze. This is the Malay convention. You have your name and then your most famous band name. Your band, right? Joe Wings. Really, really amazing session guitarist. And he told me after I did my first book, which was Jazz Improvisation Uncovered, he said, Az, you should do some stuff in Malay. I think you should translate this in Malay. I think you might get a bigger audience or you might reach out to more people. And initially I was like, I wanted to do it in English so I would get a worldwide audience. And that was most of my content. Before that was mostly in English, and I got quite a good audience. I mean, I had a student from Brazil or US, Canada. I got people from all around the world. But I noticed that not last year. Last year was the first time I did my first Malay course, and that kind of gained traction, which was really interesting. So I kind of like most of my content is now in Malay. Most, not all. It depends on kind of what I'm teaching.
Leading on to that, what do you think of the music scene in Malaysia? Has it been doing well?
I mean, I've been in the music scene in Malaysia since 1998. So it's been 20. Wait, yeah, 1998. Because I started playing guitar in 1996, but I started gigging in 1998. So Malaysia is cool. You know why? Because we actually have quite a lot of different pockets of music scenes. So there's the indie scene, which is kind of interesting, really, really kind of cool, underground indie, and then there's the singer-songwriter scene, which I gigged in that scene for years, and that's like there's an kind of an English singer-songwriter scene and also a Malay singer-songwriter scene. And the pop can be also like hip hop, or nowadays it'd be hip hop, R&B, pop, traditional music. So there's all that, and then you have the classical music community with MPO and NSO and all that, and there's also the rock scene, and there's all the kind of like very commercial scene and jingles and music production for films, and there's the video game music scene with audio implementation, things like that. I mean, that's really new. That's a very small thing, but I think Malaysia is good because for most of these kind of pockets of scenes, right, we're kind of young. Okay, there's also jazz. What's my perspective in all this? There's so many things you can do in Malaysia in terms of music scene. If you can dream big and you are willing to do the hard work, then I think Malaysia is great to start and just grow whatever you want to grow. To be honest, like if you have problems with like confidence and like kind of going out and doing your thing, then it can feel lonely. We even have kind of electronica pop kind of scene and DJs and all these kind of things, people using Ableton and doing all sorts of cool stuff. So I honestly think we have a lot of cool things here, but in terms of perspective, depends what angle you take, whether you look at it as a positive thing or you look at it as kind of a challenge or not.
What are your thoughts on public perception towards the arts in Malaysia?
These are common perceptions, right? You're either going to be an alcoholic, you're going to be a drug addict, you're going to probably just be a menace to society, a loser or whatever. Or if you're going to be, or not, you're just going to be a kind of a music teacher, like you teach at Yamaha or something like that. That's the perception in general. And I think it's just that the idea, musicians have this idea of we want to pursue the arts because it's our passion. We want to pursue, the high levels of artistry and make great art, make great music, things like that. And on the other hand, people look at you like, why are you still practicing piano for 8 hours, the same piece of music? Not bored yet? Why cannot do real thing? So there's that kind of conflict. And also, even with the fact that you have really big success stories, you have your Taylor Swifts, you have your Yuna, you have your ZRVs, you have your Yo-Yo Ma's. There are kind of iconic figures in almost any style of music that are very successful and very prestigious, and they play concert halls, and they are very known to people know them, but for some reason that hasn't taken over as the mainstream idea of being a musician. In a way, musicians sometimes can't handle the fact wanting to admit they want to be successful, and therefore the idea of the starving musician is more prevalent. And that's why I talk about it. People think that if you got paid, right, means that you sold out. And I think we're constantly judging each other. Musicians are constantly judging each other for the music that we play, for our proficiency in our musical skills, how much we get paid, or whether we get paid, or if we get paid too much, or we're too successful, have we sold out, or are we just like kind of schmoozing instead of making good music? So there's all these conflicts, if you think about it, within the music community, and there's also the conflict that's happening outside. And I think if in order for the outside perception of musicians to change, we have to kind of not be afraid to talk about it in an intellectual way, in a way that in an honest way, that hey, and not in a complaining way, meaning like, hey, why they always never pay musician, or like, why my pay not in yet? It's more like, why didn't you negotiate 50% upfront, 50% on the day of completion kind of contract? It's sometimes it's musicians' fault we don't get paid on time because we just didn't negotiate a better contract, or we're not. But then people, but you should enjoy it. You're doing what you love, right? Why are you complaining? You're lucky to get paid. There's all these kind of strips, and a lot of it's very negative. It's a very negative thing, but we don't talk about it. Or like, people talk about like, hey, he's expensive. Don't call him. He's gonna charge more. Like, later we cannot get the gig. Or like, hey, he charged so little. You think he's good? So there's a lot of stuff here. There's a lot of stuff going on here, and so I think until musicians view more highly of what they do, and also project that kind of idea of success and understanding what they do, and understanding their self-worth, then maybe society will change. But society will change the perception. And it's, some part of it's musicians' fault. Some part of it is just a prolonged, like, old school view of musicians. Like, it's just like, it just goes on and on and on, So there's so many things involved.
Do you have any advice for people who, face burnout or anything?
I have a lot of advice. I've had burnout many, many times. You could just do something else for a while. For example, you could draw, paint, read a book, go hiking. Now, obviously, CMCO, so it's like, don't go hiking. I mean, it depends, but I mean, do something completely opposite from what you do, and just don't feel guilty for leaving music for a day, or two, a week, 2 weeks, because yeah, you're right. Burnout is real. I have one of my former students. He had burnout, and I think he stopped doing music for 1.5 to 2 years, and he's back. He's making even better music than before. And then the other thing is to realize that music doesn't have to consume your life. You don't have to just do music 24/7. Again, you see prodigies and virtuosos and successful musicians. You see Jacob Collier. You like, why am I even doing music? I am not worthy. You might have feelings like that every once in a while, because you're like, how come I cannot even hear my interval correctly, and this person's singing microtones? Why? Like, I guess to realize that we are all, this sounds super cliche, but we are all kind of on our own journey. We are at a different stage in our music. As hard as it is, don't compare yourself to someone who's had, in a way, an unfair or distinctively different background and upbringing as you have. You can have hobbies, believe it or not, musicians. You can actually have hobbies. You can do different things. And even though the mass belief for musicians, especially people who want to be high-level performers, you have to practice 8 hours a day. And if you don't practice one day, you start noticing it. Don't practice 2 days. Other people start noticing it. All these sayings that like, especially in the classical world, it's been like this propagated that you can never one day stop practice. And I think that can be unhealthy to a point where you could hurt yourself. There are people who just don't practice. They complain about everything that's lacking. So there's a kind of a thin line there. And so if you're feeling burnout, hang out, do something else, and trust me, even if you quit doing music for 2 weeks, right, you probably will still be okay if you were genuinely been working at it for a long time until you burn out because you've been working hard at it. Now if you've been slacking off, then you'll return to the slacker state or less lah.
What is the one thing you wish to see Malaysians change?
Don't be too mediocre. Mediocrity is the problem of the Malaysian society. Mediocrity, in a sense, to be very specific, we have such a tidak apa attitude, which means that if you do a gig and 4 out of the 5 musicians didn't practice, right, it's okay lah, no one will notice lah. Jazz gig, no one will notice your mistakes. Or like, hey, we're playing this thing for hotel gig, no one's listening, doesn't matter, don't have to practice. Hey, I don't know this song, it doesn't matter, you're gonna get it lah. So we have a lot of this kind of tidak apa-ness, which ends up being mediocre instead of accepting substandard levels of things, right? Demanding for things to actually be very good, to basically do your best. I think that's one thing that if Malaysia changes, right, that's the one thing that I think can push Malaysia higher worldwide standard. We already have a lot of really good people here. We're already like at world-class standards for a lot of things, but we're not consistent in that way. We need to raise our standards and expect that we cannot just let substandard performance be the norm and be accepted.
Do you have one ultimate advice for youngsters, whether in Malaysia or abroad?
Yeah, my advice would be to keep learning and keep improving, guys. Keep learning and keep improving. That's the biggest advice I can give, which means that don't look at college or school as the end of your education. Like, really look at learning and growing as a lifelong thing, meaning that every day is a chance for you to improve your skills in one way or another, whether it's musical skills or learning about, as a musician especially, just like learning about marketing, learning about social media, like how to do a podcast using Discord, how to upload a video, how to edit stuff, how to do subtitles, or all these different skills that sometimes the skills might not be music related, but they are definitely music career related. We should always strive, just continue to learn. So if my advice would be, don't be complacent. Don't think that at one point you're good enough. And the biggest danger that most people will encounter is if you're actually kind of good, but you think you're really, really good. I think that's the biggest problem. Some people, especially if you're in Malaysia, you might think you're really good when you're kind of good. You're good for Malaysia, but if you leave the country, even if you move to Singapore or if you go to Taiwan or you suddenly move to Hong Kong, then you realize that you're not that good, and that can be a very we're not even talking you're moving to Germany or moving to London or something, and to realize that you're not at the level that people expect. That can be a really scary wake-up call for people. But because a lot of people just stay in the country, you can be deceived that you're actually good or better than you are. So instead of being fooled with that, just know that there's always room for improvement. You can always improve. So keep learning and invest in your self-education. Like, actually invest in courses, invest in books, invest in videos, invest in going for online Zoom calls with famous musicians, taking private lessons via Zoom or Skype. Yeah, keep learning. Don't accept the level that you are as being like, don't think you're level 99. You're not yet. You're not like this video game thought, right? You're not at the maximum level you are supposed to be. There's always a chance for you to improve. So keep on learning. That will make you a better person, human being, musician, whatever it is.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Welcome so much. Thanks so much. I really appreciate this. Thanks for the opportunity.